Hello and welcome to Press TV News Analysis. I'm Kaveh Taghwai. The crackdown in Bahrain has reached unprecedented proportions. 8 senior opposition leaders were handed life sentences in a court called the Court of National Safety. The crime, exercising their legitimate rights of peaceful assembly and expression. This is while the government just recently announced talks to begin with the opposition.
A Bahraini special court has handed sentences of 21 Bahraini activists who come from a wide range of political backgrounds. The court has been set up by the Saudi-backed Bahraini government to try anti-government activists arrested since the start of the mid-February revolution. Hassan Ali Bushaima, Abdul Jalil Al-Senges, Abdul Hadi Al-Khawaja, Abdul Wahab Hussein Ali, Abdul Jalil Al-Miqdad, Saeed Mirza Al-Nouri, Muhammad Habib Al-Saffaf, and Saeed Al-Shahabi, who has been tried in absentia, are 8 of the defendants who have received life sentences. 13 others have also received sentences of up to 15 years in jail. The Bahraini government has accused the defendants of trying to overthrow the Al Khalifa ruling dynasty and threatening public security by organizing anti-government protests. Reports say during the court session, human rights activist Abdul Hadi Al-Khawaja and other defendants were beaten and taken out of the courtroom when they voiced their anger at the ruling. This in the presence of representatives from the European Union and the United States. Following the announcement of the special court's ruling, protesters took to the streets to show their outrage. However, they were attacked by the Saudi-backed regime forces. The verdicts come more than 4 months after the start of Saudi-backed forces' brutal crackdown on anti-government protests. They have already brought condemnation from human rights groups and Bahraini political parties. International rights group Human Rights First says the defendants received a sham trial.
This was not a fair or proper legal process by any standard. There was evidence of torture, denial of proper contact with lawyers, and failure to provide basic legal safeguards. This was a sham trial, another stain on Bahrain's already discredited human rights record.
Bahrain's main opposition group Al-Wafaq has also slammed the court's sentences. It has threatened to boycott the government's proposed dialogue with the opposition along with Wad Party. It remains to be seen whether the verdicts will leave any room for the government's proposed dialogue with the opposition.
Well, our guests for this news analysis are IGA Director Ali Al-Ahmad, who joins us from Washington. We have a Bahraini political activist, Jafar Al-Hasabi, who joins us from London, and former assistant professor at the University of Bahrain, Colin Covell, who joins us from Seattle. Thank you all. Let me start with Jafar Al-Hasabi. Jafar Al-Hasabi, you have a court called the Court of National Safety by definition, which hands life sentences for peaceful protests who beats defendants in court. Do you think that this court can be deemed legal?
Well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I can start with saying that this court is a military court, first of all, and it is really a political trial, and they are trying civilians. From military court, trying civilians, they just they don't have any evidence against these figures, political figures who've been active so long, and they are peacefully demonstrating their rights and their speech. They are delivering their speech in different occasions, different places, and it is peacefully, and there is no single evidence from the government saying that these people or the figures are saying that they tried to overthrow let's say the government or the ruling family by force, and whatever they just use their speech, and they in a very peaceful manner. And I just want to say something, that this kind of regime and prove that the people are the struggle for the struggle we've been for from long time is this trial is proving that there is no we can't live with this regime anymore. The people are getting fed up from this regime, because there is no common, let's say, factor to live with the people, with the Bahraini people.
Okay,
so,
let's get back to that point. I'd like to extend a question to you on that point, but before that, along the lines of what you just said, Colin Covell, an official of the human rights, Brian Dooley, some of the things he has said: not a fair or proper legal process, evidence of torture, denial of proper contact with lawyers, failure to provide basic legal safeguards, and he said this was a sham trial, another stain on Bahrain's discredited human rights record. Do you think it's an overstatement, or is he talking the truth?
Well, from a perspective of legal jurisprudence, when you are summarily rounded up in the middle of the night by armed thugs, you are disappeared to some jail or prison, who knows where, because your family is not notified where you're taken to, and then you're beaten into submission, and then told weeks later you'll be put on trial the next morning, and you go there and you were found guilty and sentenced either to life imprisonment or several multi-year sentences, then this is what we call a farce. It is not serious. It is what legal experts around the world refer to as kangaroo courts. Kangaroo referring to the Australian animal that jumps around, because when you have no due process and it's arbitrary, then the court can do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, without any rhyme or reason. And that's exactly what is happening here with these savage sentences of these human rights activists, these defenders of democracy, these fighters for freedom in Bahrain.
And based on that,
courage
Colin Covell,
and spirit will
based on that, Colin Covell, Ali Al-Ahmad, these harsh sentences were given when just recently the ruler of Bahrain announced July 1 as the date for talks to begin with the opposition. Now, what could be the impact of these verdicts on the prospect of the government-proposed national dialogue?
The so-called national dialogue is really, again, is a distraction created by the Bahraini monarchy to say, look, we have a dialogue. This reminds me of the dialogue in Saudi Arabia. Basically, it's a dialogue between the regime and itself. It's not going to go anywhere. It has no value. And the dialogue should be between equals. It should address the core of the regime. What we have is really a nonsense dialogue that really has nothing to do with the reality. It is the only people who are going to participate in the dialogue is the people who are cheering for the government, and they are handpicked by the monarchy to do so. So the word dialogue, and the United States really is part of the problem in this, because they are the one who encourage dialogue. So this is the result and the policy of the United States saying dialogue. This is the dialogue of Mr. Barack Obama. It's a farce, and the sentences and the trial themselves, the process of a trial, which lacked any process, showed the true nature of the regime. And I agree with Mr. Hisabi that this is basically the final chapter in the history of this monarchy. They have shown themselves again, and they have been given the opportunity to change, but they continue to deceive themselves and try to deceive the world.
Since you pointed out the U.S. stance, Ali Al-Ahmad, I'm going to come in here and ask you the stance by the U.S. Yes, Barack Obama, in the most recent visit by the Bahraini Crown Prince, said you need to have talks with the opposition. Of course, prior to that, just like their stance has always been, Bahrain remains a strong ally. So then we got to the third action by the U.S. recently, and that was... well, Bahrain, by the way, we're going to refer you to a list of human rights offenders in the world. How do you explain that, the way the United States has postured itself when it comes to Bahrain?
When it comes to Bahrain, the policy of the United States has not changed. I'll give you an example. Talking about human rights, Michael Bosner, who is the chief human rights officer in the State Department, was in Bahrain last week, but he did not meet with the human rights activists in Bahrain. So this is an amazing situation. Why wouldn't he meet with them? He didn't meet with Nabil Rajab, the main human rights leader in Bahrain, did not receive a call to meet Michael Bosner. Why? Because Michael Bosner didn't go there for really to talk about human rights in Bahrain, but to give the impression that the United States is concerned about human rights issues in Bahrain.
That's a very good question. Let me throw that to Jafar Al-Hasabi.
But you don't see a lot of real work.
Why wouldn't Michael Posner meet with Bahraini opposition while he came to Bahrain? Why wouldn't he meet with, as Ali Al-Ahmad pointed out, with the director of the Bahraini Center for Human Rights, and that would be Nabil Rajab?
Well, if he is sent by the United States government, he will obviously will go to the society being elected or being established by the government. He will never see anyone from the human rights defenders who are neutral and they are working for the people. They will meet. If he comes to Bahrain as a messenger of the government, he will obviously will not meet human rights defenders or see the reality on Bahrain, what is happening. Normally, anyone who is neutral, he will try to visit the villages. He will try to see the normal people who are marching and chanting every day and show themselves how they are peaceful people demanding for their rights to live and to get a kind of dignity. Some of dignity being taken by this regime and also he can, if he's neutral, as I said,
right,
he can go to the people. Yesterday or the day before, we had one man, old man, killed in a cold blood by sword from the thugs of the government thugs. These are the reality on the ground in Bahrain.
Right.
So
let me come to Colin Cavell. Let me extend a little bit about one of the statements there that is made by our guest in London. And that's about Michael Posner visiting villages, talking to people. Well, I'm sure when he was in Bahrain, I'm sure he made his way through the villages prior to visiting the U.S. base there, which, based on an announcement back in June 2010, the U.S. announced that it's going to double its military presence in Bahrain, to be the construction to happen in phases, June to be the second phase. Is this what the United States doesn't want to give up, and the weight that it's giving is the doubling and their overall military presence in Bahrain?
Well, definitely the U.S. does not want to give up its military presence in Bahrain. The Fifth Fleet is stationed there. It has docking rights in Bahrain, and they police the entire Middle East region from Bahrain. So the U.S. does not want to give that up. However, on the other hand, the Obama administration is engaged in a policy, I would say a generational necessity, to get rid of its autocratic clients in the region. It's already engaged in transplanting, transitioning to different regimes in Tunisia and in Egypt and in Yemen, its former client autocratic states. As well, it's also attempting to supplant the regimes of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, and as well as the Assad in Syria, which are not its client states. So it's trying to transform the entire region. Can it do so and ignore the Gulf monarchies? I don't think so. So I agree with Mr. Ali Ahmed and Mr. Jafar Al-Saidi that the Bahraini regime is deceiving the world and deceiving itself when it's putting on these trials and attempting to look legitimate. However, there is disagreement. I do think the U.S. wants to transition these monarchical regimes to traditional capitalist regimes. And they are going slow at it because they cannot do all of the transitioning.
Okay,
and
then I need to get a reaction
time.
from Ali Al Ahmad on that. I'm sorry to jump in. Ali Al Ahmad, a reaction, please, to Colin Cavell there. Transitional transformation of these regimes. Is that even possible, given the track record that we've seen now from the United States, the UN, the armed wing of the UN, NATO, in terms of how they are approaching the Arab Spring, especially when, in some respects, some have called it a counter-revolution?
Well, I disagree that the U.S. is not involved in supporting changing the regime. These changes happen despite or in spite of the United States. What's happening in Yemen, the U.S. is now trying to contain the result of the uprising by guiding the outcome. In Bahrain, they basically took the stance against the people of Bahrain. I'm sorry to say that, but this is the reality, and we can't say we cannot contradict reality when we see it ourselves here in Washington. When we see that the U.S. government bans the leaders of democracy in Bahrain from coming to the United States, but extends its warm welcome to the members of the ruling monarchy in Bahrain, and allow the most corrupt, one of the most corrupt people in Bahrain, who's leading the crackdown in Bahrain against the people, to come to the White House and have a private meeting with Obama. That's allowed, and the man is called a moderate. The Washington Post, for example, called the Bahraini crown prince a moderate, yet called Hassan Mshayma, who's calling for a democratic republic in Bahrain, called him a radical. This is an amazing turn about face. This is like saying that George Washington, one of the early fathers of this country, is a radical, and King George V of Britain, who was an absolute monarch, calling him a moderate. So this is really ridiculous. It's not only the State Department and the White House, but also the media. Some of this media in this country are following the same line, because they are subject to deception by the Bahraini monarchy and its arm, its lobbying arm in this city.
Right.
So
well,
really
let me come in and ask Jafar Al-Hasabi about how Bahrain can become a member. I'm sorry, Ali Al-Ahmad. Jafar Al-Hasabi, how can Bahrain, along the lines of what Ali Al-Ahmad was saying, how can Bahrain become a member of this contact group, or so-called contact group of Libya, which is to make decisions of the future of Libya? I mean, what makes Bahrain a qualified member?
Well, it is with these policies. It is funny that they are taking. Let's say Bahrain is a small country, and it should become a symbol for a real democracy on the region, and this should be should be encouraged by the American government. But and the base for this kind of let's say simplicity is there. We have people are willing to get the principle of democracy to spread it out to the region. But unfortunately, the double standard of United States of America is ridiculous, and it is not. You can't. Let's say predict what kind of
Let's talk about this double standard. I'm sorry to jump in, Colin Cavell. I'd like to ask you about this, and that's the role of the UN, which is under question. I mean, in this case in point, the UNESCO has actually appointed Bahrain in a meeting that was chaired. They appointed Bahrain for it. This is while the government in Bahrain has demolished mosques in the country. So how does that explain UNESCO's action in terms of appointing Bahrain?
Well, I know Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations, has spoken out against the violence in Bahrain against the opposition. Why UNESCO is doing this, I cannot explain. However, I can say that just yesterday, the President of the European Parliament, Jerzy Buzek, came out against the regime in Bahrain and spoke quite strongly against the violence of the regime. And there are many others, especially newspapers in the United States. They are not all claiming that the Bahraini Crown Prince is a human rights advocate. There are other newspapers that have trashed him royally. So there's a mixed opinion of that in the United States, but there's also around the world condemnation of the Bahraini regime in general.
And Ali Al-Ahmad, where is this going to lead in terms of the actions that the Bahraini government is taking, especially when we come to the July 1st date, where they have promoted this, what you want to call talks with the opposition, when you got, well, the ones that were handed death sentences, life imprisonments, along with, of course, all the other opposition who were have been detained inside the jails there?
Well, you know, one thing we have to realize that the monarchy step was made, such step was made only after they were rest assured by the White House that we are behind you, we are safeguarding your regime. So not until they knew that they had support in Washington, in the White House and in the State Department, they went ahead and issued these harsh sentences and continued to kill people in the street. If they had any hesitation or pressure from the White House, they would not have done such a thing. And they downgraded the national dialogue from being led by the crown prince of the monarchy to just a stooge of the monarchy, the spokesperson of the parliament. What we're going to see in the next few weeks, you will see a tension rising. Last night we saw more protests, and we anticipate on Friday will be greater number and larger scale of protests in Bahrain. So we are going to go back again to that period of violence. The United States will again dance around. The United Nations, either the UNESCO or the United Nations Human Rights Commission and others, they will dance around the issue without taking real results and real steps. You know, Bahrain is a small country. How can Bahrain impose itself on the UNESCO? I don't understand unless the UNESCO itself is supporting Bahrain, and that is the reality, because the UNESCO and the World Bank are promoting the monarchy, and that's why they're giving them this opportunity to chair these meetings and these commissions.
Thank you very much. That brings us to an end for this edition of News Analysis. I want to thank IGA Director there. You just heard his statements, Ali Al-Ahmad from Washington. Also Bahraini political activist from London, Jafar Al-Hasabi. And former assistant professor at the University of Bahrain, Colin Covell there, with the statements from Seattle. Also you, the viewer, for watching. Send us your questions at newsroom@presstv.ir. For me, Koba Tapway, and the entire team here in Tehran, it's goodbye.